with the permission of the chair, we move on to the next presentation on how is primary PCI different from other PCI. May I have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Viveka Kumar, Senior Consultant Interventional Cardiologist and Electrophysiologist, and also the Director of Cath Lab at the Max Super Specialty Hospitals from New Delhi, for the next 20 minutes. Dr. Kumar, please.
Well, so good morning, chairpersons, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to speak on how primary PCI is different from other PCIs. So let me tell you that this is only intervention in cardiology after left main with triple vessel disease where the bypass would decrease the overall mortality. The primary PCI is only other procedure which will significantly decrease the mortality. So we can know that how important is this procedure, but it is fraught with a lot of associated complications, and it's not a it's a different ball game. It's not like a usual PCI, and that is why there are many neo cath labs and many established cath labs also which has not ventured into the field of primary PCI because it needs a lot of commitment. And we'll take some examples and see how primary PCI is different. So this is a patient who has, classical acute inferior valve MI, and you could see that there is a lot of thrombus burden here, the first slide, and then we, immediately wired the proximal right coronary artery, and you could see that there is a lot of thrombus migration into the posterolateral branch as well. And then you could see this is a quite scary picture, which, anyone who has seen primary PCI would see that the amount of thrombus burden in this large right coronary artery is quite scary. And if the patient gets into no flow, then it's a real mess because salvaging this patient would be very difficult. And then despite a lot of data that thrombosuction does not decrease the mortality and does not ease out the procedure, we could see that in this case thrombosuction done did quite effectively decrease the thrombus burden. And then the proximal lesion, which was the culprit region where the acute occlusion of the right coronary artery had happened, we had stented it there. But you could see that after stenting the proximal, there was again large thrombus burden in PLV branch, and you could see that we had to again do repeated runs of thrombosuction. And this is a thrombus export catheter which has removed the clot from the posterolateral branch, and at the end the good flow was achieved. This is another patient who had acute coronary syndrome and has acute inferior valve MI, where we had done a good job. You could see that the stenting in the proximal segment was done, and patient had achieved good result and was shifted to ICU. But patient started complaining of chest pain within 30 minutes of being shifted to CCU, and ECG showed again new ST elevation in inferior leads. And though giving the same amount of anticoagulants and antiplatelets, the patient, we checked the ACT and that was 220, and probably that would have been the cause of acute stent thrombosis. And then again this patient's thrombosuction was done, and then plain ballooning, no new stent was required, and the TIMI grade 3 flow was achieved. After this, the patient discharged, and you deserve a good weekend like today we have come here. But you could see that the patient had another patient who had come after within a week with acute stent thrombosis, and again we had to rewire the LAD and restore the blood flow. And this patient needed intra-aortic balloon pump and a lot of support from inotropic support also. So later on the patient had to be given a device also for repeated ventricular tachycardia, and he had gone into heart failure as well. So if you look at the issues while dealing a primary PCI, time is very important factor. Unlike the planned angioplasty where you can plan the things in advance, time is money as far as the primary PCI is concerned. So door to balloon time is very important factor, and every goal, not only the procedure, but the all logistic of shifting the patient to the cath lab for shortest possible door to balloon time is important. And outcome is very much determined by the patient's presentation, because earlier he comes to you, the better it is. Arrhythmias and all those things, early reperfusion arrhythmias are also very common. So the patient presentation is very important. If he comes with cardiogenic shock in higher Phillips class, then the mortality are going to be significantly higher. Risk of bleeding also, because at one end you don't really want to have no flow and slow flow, and in the bargain you start giving potent antiplatelets, potent anticoagulants, and then you add them with GP2B inhibitors, but at a cost of, increased bleeding, and more seriously the cerebral bleed and the GI bleeds. And then procedural outcomes has to looked at immediate and long term, because as in the previous slide, Professor Mohanan had clearly shown that if anyone who has had an ACS or acute MI, they are at a significantly higher risk of subsequent events, and Grace registry data did also show that. So these are the patients where we should not just forget after restoring TIMI grade 3 flow, but secondary prevention strategies and lifestyle modification with the drugs is very important issue in these patients, and they need to be really closely followed up. If you look at the goal of early reperfusion, if you look at the data, mortality reductions as benefit of reperfusion therapy is fairly time dependent, and you can see from this graph that after as the long time passes by, beyond 6 to 7 hours, the benefits are not as much, and beyond 12 hours, definitely, unless the patient isn't cardiogenic shock and ongoing ischemia is there, he is not going to benefit from the intervention. Major components of time delay between the onset of infarction and restoration of flow in infarct-related arteries is, patient's presentation, his response, then decisions, and in our country, logistics of transportations, and the acceptance that the patient has got a myocardial infarction. These are the things. And then the most of these acute MIs would happen during the night time, so that's again an issue that most of the facilities would not be working that time. So the door to balloon time suffers. If you look at the reperfusion therapy for patient with ST elevation MI, that shows that the transfer of the patient, the diagnostic algorithm, all these things are very important, and it has to be within the stipulated time period guidelines, and then only we can achieve a good door to balloon time. So to achieve these goals, the compromises we make, that we do not know the patient's renal function, we do not know his blood counts, we do not know his platelets, especially in this season in Delhi where the dengue fever is high. If somebody comes with low platelets and we load them with these potent antiplatelets and anticoagulations, risk of bleeding would be more. And then if the patient has had a cardiac arrest or has been intubated or post CPR patient, we really don't know what is happening to his neurological condition. If you look at the ST elevation MI patients, they are at high risk subset, and there are major, a lot of studies which have shown. The one study, mortality after percutaneous coronary intervention was 1.9% during the index hospitalization and 0.7% within 30 days after discharge. A 30-day mortality rate of patients with ST elevation MI is between 2.5 and 10% in reports. Patients with complex lesions and comorbidities have higher 30-day mortality, almost 11%, and compared to 6% standard. And NEJM 2012 data showed that even patients who come with cardiogenic shock, the mortality could be as much as 55%. So we are dealing with a very high risk subsets. And then the primary PCI is different from conventional one, that most of them, quite a few of them, those who come with cardiogenic shock and all, would need circulatory assist devices like intra-aortic balloon pump, Impella devices, which we had used in our settings in Max Hospital, and ECMO also we have used quite a few patients who have gone into cardiogenic shock, and especially associated with ARDS and all. ECMO is a very good device where we can salvage quite a few of them. Primary endpoint 30-day mortality, though the data does not favor very highly about intra-aortic balloon pump, but we see in our regular practice that this does help in this situation. If you look at the addressing the challenges of selecting an anticoagulant strategies, we need to really look at the various factors like age of the patient. The older the patient, the less aggressive antiplatelets and anticoagulation has to be there. We need to take into account the renal function, the cost, also ease of use, and time of the cath, whether the patient had previous PCI or patient is going for CABG or medical treatment, ischemic and bleeding risk, all these things has to be taken in account so that the patient does not suffer excessive bleeding. And impact of therapy on the outcomes of PCI in ACS patient also looks at the safety and efficacy of the various anticoagulants and antiplatelet agents. So we need to have a balancing act of safety and efficacy, high risk of ischemic event vis-a-vis high risk of bleeding events, and we need to find a sweet spot of inhibition of platelet aggregation so that the bleeding is not excessive. At the same time, the patient gets the best anticoagulant and antiplatelet effect so that the stent thrombosis rates and thrombotic complications are lesser. In stable angioplasty versus ST elevation MI, incidence of stent thrombosis is also, you can see the data from basket trial that showed that almost more than 2 times risk of stent thrombosis in patients who go for ST elevation MI intervention compared to the elective angioplasties. And the academic research consortium did show that the stent thrombosis rate at 30 day is significantly higher to the tune of 2.6%. The genesis of stent thrombosis in the setting of primary PCI or acute MI is multiple, like stent factors. If we have used thicker stent with polymers, the blood factors like the antiplatelet anticoagulation, then the procedural factor, if the leftover dissections or incomplete stent appositions are there, then the antithrombotic and anticoagulant therapies like trials did show that if you are using bivalirudin and stopping the bivalirudin immediately after procedure, the early stent thrombosis were more, and the lesion factors, longer the lesion, more thrombus burden, and more plaquey the lesion, the more risk of stent thrombosis. And of course, the patient factors is also very important, like the drug response, like in our country, clopidogrel resistance or relative resistance was significantly higher. So we need to know, and then lower the ejection fraction, higher the risk of stent thrombosis. And of course, the ACS situation is in itself generates more, pro-thrombotic milieu, and risk of stent thrombosis would be more. So thrombus jailing, which we have seen with the imaging techniques also, that this would relate to more re-stent thrombosis and thrombotic complications in coronary arteries. If you look at the findings of typical after angioplasty PCI findings in ACS settings, you could see that beyond the stents also OCT data and IVUS data has shown that there is a lot of thrombus which have been jailed behind the stent, and that could be prothrombotic. In fact, Professor Satyant Sharma would remember that when the stents came in, we were students, but one of the contraindications for using stents for initial days was that there should not be thrombus, because that will cause more stent thrombosis. So thrombus encroachment after stenting is a common finding in patients with acute MI, but fortunately now we have got more potent antiplatelets and antithrombotic agents which would counter it, but nonetheless the risk still remains and the risk of stent thrombosis would be higher. Malapposition in the setting of acute myocardial infarction have shown after the Stentis trial came and thoroughly all the stent implantation, when they got studied, it showed that during the acute myocardial infarction setting, we do not really have clear idea about the vessel size, and that results into stent undersizing more often than oversizing, and the risk of stent thrombosis would be significantly higher because of the malapposition of the stents. Also, fortunately, it's quite forgiving and doesn't happen as often as it should happen because of the malapposition of the stents. And if you look at the pool analysis from Ravel Series E series trial, that also shows that event-free survival at 4 years is not very high. So stent thrombosis, we have one arm stronger antiplatelets, prasugrel, ticagrelor, cangrelor, and GP2B inhibitors, which is gone out of much use. But for the major bleeding, we can counter that by doing radial access primary. We have shifted for all primary PCIs with the radial access so that the risk of major bleeding does not happen. And bivalirudin of late has clearly shown that the risk of bleeding would be significantly higher, especially in femoral access, so that we can translate this data into uses of bivalirudin in the setting of ACS and acute myocardial infarction. So friends, ladies and gentlemen, to take home message is that the primary PCI patients are a very high risk subset of intervention. Comorbidities and patient presentation greatly determine the short-term and long-term PCI outcomes. The stent thrombosis are 3 to 10 times more frequent after primary PCI than the elective PCI, and modifiable risk factors such as suboptimal post-procedural results and insufficient antithrombotic therapy are often observed. Balancing risk of stent thrombosis to risk of bleeding is important. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Vivek. That was a very elaborate review, and you brought out the problems of primary PCI in a very definite way. Any questions from the audience?
Can you speak in the...
Can you come to the mic,
yeah,
sir?
right.
What are the valid reasons for increased thrombosis in a primary PCI stenting?
Yeah, so by definition, acute MI happens because of the acute thrombus formation in the lesion because of the plaque rupture. And as I said that if you are putting a stent, because stent is also after all a foreign material, so if you are putting a stent in a place where already there is a lot of thrombus, the risk of propagation of that thrombus and causing thrombosis is higher. So number one is that acute myocardial infarction, it's a prothrombotic milieu. There is a lot of procoagulant mediators which are in the body system, so that would invite a lot of clot formation. Second thing is that no matter how much thrombus aspiration and thrombosuction you have done, residual amount of thrombus would be there, and that would again promote more of this thing, clot formation. Third thing is that these are the patients, especially acute MI patients who are coming de novo, who had never been on aspirin and any antithrombotic agents. So if you load them with antiplatelets, it takes little while, and that is why we are not favoring clopidogrel, which takes longer duration, 6 to 8 hours to have its onset of action. We prefer in acute setting ticagrelor or prasugrel, which will have within 1 hour. Now we have got access to what we call soluble ticagrelor, which is now available in in India also, what we call crushed tablet of ticagrelor, which will have within half an hour onset of action. So that has also would decrease the risk of acute stent thrombosis in the setting of acute myocardial infarctions. So these are the various factors which would increase the risk of stent thrombosis in the setting of acute MI. Please come forward. Sorry.
Post-MI, primary PCI is done very frequently now. What is your answer for all these questions then?
No, so answer is that we need to have more potent antiplatelet. We need to get rid of thrombus, and that is why we are coming to a trial where and the data is quite positive that defer the stenting in acute MI. So you do the thrombosuction, give antiplatelet, anticoagulation and all, let the thrombus get dissolved completely, and after 24 to 48 hours, you recheck it, and if there is not much of thrombus, you can do a delayed stenting, which has shown to decrease the risk of stent thrombosis in the setting of acute myocardial infarction.
Primary PCI even in ST elevation MI?
Yeah.
Actually, another message is that the patient should reach the hospital as early as possible.
Yeah.
Actually, what Vivek is trying to point out is a specific problem which occurs in our Indian circumstances. When patients come late, usually there is a larger thrombus load. Those patients which come early probably can be treated better. Now with better stents, better antiplatelet, better technologies, the results are far better, but these are the problems which are worth knowing. Thank you very much, Vivek. This was very interesting.
May I also invite Dr. Mohanan? We have the presentation of the citation and the plaque. I request Professor Sativan Sharma to kindly step forward and present the citation and the plaque to Dr. Mohanan. I request Dr. Sambi to present it to Dr. Kumar. May now invite Dr. Ravinder Sambi to kindly step forward and present it to Dr. Viveka Kumar. I would now like to invite Colonel S.K. Parashar to please step onto the dais and present a citation and a plaque to our chairman, Professor Sativan Sharma.